Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Al. I want to thank you for joining me on my channel, Kindred Souls of Brooklyn. And today, folks, I'm going to do another episode of Brooklyn Secrets. And the biggest secret in all of Brooklyn is whatever happened to the Maryland 400. The Maryland 400 is a group of guys who stayed behind, who actually saved America because the Continental Army under George Washington would have been captured on August 27, 1776. So stay tuned for a really cool video. I hope you enjoy it. I want to set the stage really quick. The date was, August of 1776. As we know from my history books, the Declaration of Independence was July 4th, 1776. So this was only a month and a half into our independence. And essentially, George Washington knew that the British were going to try to take over New York. And so he brought the Continental Army over to face the British, who the British, a lot of people don't realize, unloaded all of their forces right near the Verrazano Bridge. There was a pier there called Denise Pier, and I'll show you a picture of that. I have a video on it as well. But Denise Pier, in that area, there was a lot of what they call Tories, people who were loyal to Britain in the area. So the British unloaded about 20 or 30,000 troops, including some Hessian soldiers and other allies that were with them, into Brooklyn. And so George Washington was pretty much outnumbered about 4-1. So George Washington was a good general, and he realized that if his entire army was captured, the fight for independence was going to be over. And he knew that he had to leave and fight another day and gather his forces up and gain more momentum and just try to escape. So with that in mind, there was a regiment from Maryland made up of mostly younger guys, Irish guys for the most part, who decided to stay and fight and hold off the British long enough for George Washington to escape into Manhattan, and then eventually into New Jersey, and then eventually over to Pennsylvania, which is where he spent the famous winter at Valley Forge. So the Battle of Brooklyn is well cataloged, and obviously the Battle of Brooklyn took place, basically in and around Prospect Park, Greenwood Cemetery, and obviously the high ground over there. It went into the Gowanus, which is where you have the Whole Foods now, like on 3rd Avenue, into that whole area. But here's the greatest mystery, folks, is when these guys were eventually overrun, and they estimate there was about 256 of them that were pretty much overrun at that point. They just don't know where they were buried. It's the greatest mystery in all of Brooklyn. If anyone out there can solve this, I mean, there's been professors, there's been history people looking into this for years. There's a lot of theories as to where they might be buried. Some of them include being buried near 9th Street. There's actually I'll try to put a picture of it up here. There's actually a Veterans of Foreign War post right near St. Thomas Aquinas Church on 4th Avenue and 9th Street, and also around the Whole Foods area as well. It's very hard because obviously back then you didn't have what we have today, the technology to record things the way we do today. So we're just kind of relying on sketchy reports, and because Brooklyn is such a popular big place and has always been so close to Manhattan, there's been lots of things built. There's been lots of buildings put up over there, parking lots, you name it, schools. So it's very, very hard to find a lot of these artifacts. Of course, back then, a lot of it was farmland, wasn't really developed. But it's a big mystery, folks. If anyone out there can solve this mystery as to where these guys are buried, not only would it, obviously the families are long gone of these men, but I'm sure there's someone who can trace their roots back. But it would be an amazing thing for American history, because like I was telling you, if these guys didn't stand back and hold off the British long enough for Washington to escape, it would have all been over. No questions about it. The British had the best navy in the world. They had superior forces. They had superior technology. They just didn't have the will, in a sense, to do it. But because it was early on in the war, they did have the will at that point, because it was early in the war. Later on in the war, that's pretty much why they gave up. They realized it was a losing effort. But had this battle been lost in a sense of George Washington being captured, it would have been a complete moral loss to America, and it would have folded, no doubt. Now, in doing the research, we also have to entertain the possibility, because none of these remains have been found throughout all these years of searching, we also have to entertain the possibility, which some of the research reflects, which is that Britain and the British soldiers didn't bury the soldiers at all. There's a possibility that they just lied them out there and you got to look at it from the perspective of maybe how the British were looking at it, which was these people were traitors and they were going against England, and it's a bad code of war, obviously, but we'd like to think that that didn't happen. But there's actually some research which reflects that there was I believe it was a priest who went through there after the battle, and he had mentioned about how, because it was summertime, it was such an awful smell because of all was left, all the remains. So, but again, we don't know if that's absolutely true or not. I mean, I find it hard to believe that all these people were just kind of left out there. You would think, there's also talk that the assumption was that they were put into like a mass grave, which kind of would make the most sense. I mean, again, British had a lot of resources. They had their naval ships, in the harbor. Lots of things could have happened. They also kept some of the guys were captured, and they kept them as prisoners. So unfortunately, none of the folks actually came forward and said actually what happened to these guys who were left on the battlefield. We don't know. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to show you a video. If you guys, for folks who are watching this who have never been to Brooklyn or have moved out, I'm going to show you a short video of some of the area around the Gowanus as to where the possibility is of where these guys might be. So just stay tuned for that. I hope you find it interesting. So folks, if you've never been to Brooklyn, this is the area of the Gowanus where it's possible that the Maryland 400 were placed into a mass grave. There's actually a Whole Foods there right now. But like I say, people have been searching for them for a really long time, and it would just be nice to do the proper thing once they were found, give them a proper memorial to thank them for their service and what they did to save America, and to thank all the folks out there every day who do what they do. So folks, I want to thank you for joining me on this video. Please like, please subscribe, please drop me a comment. I'd really appreciate it. And until the next video, this is Al signing off. Take care, folks.